street. You gotta, yeah, he just got shot. He's laying dead. He might be dead. He might be dying. Hurry up. Please, could you hurry up, please, please.
Telling me once.
Please.
Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner announced the exoneration of David Sparks this afternoon. Sparks was a teen when he was convicted in the murder of Gary Hall 17 years ago. It turns out there was another suspect that the defense did not know about.
Last year, I released a video on the Jimmy Dennis case, as well as the Ronald Thomas, aka Hollow Man case, and their post-conviction relief, as their 2 homicide cases were overturned due to Brady violations by the prosecutors who handled the cases at the time. Since the 1960s, researchers and watchdog groups have been very adamant that prosecutors in the United States have too much unchecked power and not enough safeguards against prosecutorial misconduct. On May 23, 2008, following a bench trial, David Sparks, who was 16 at the time of his arrest and 18 when he was convicted of first-degree murder, firearms not to be carried without a license, possession of a firearm by a minor, and possession of an instrument of crime, and sentenced to life in prison without parole for the shooting death of Gary Hall. On September 4, 2006, 16-year-old David Sparks was at a Labor Day block party on a 4200 block of North 16th Street in Philadelphia's Nicetown neighborhood. Around 10:30 p.m., an argument erupted, and 19-year-old Gary Hall was fatally shot in the chest and head. Sparks, who didn't know Hall personally but was near the chaos, grabbed a borrowed cell phone and called 911. In a recorded call, he's heard shouting, "Send an ambulance, someone's been shot, they're possibly dying," and urging responders to hurry up as he stayed on the line for nearly 2 minutes.
Hello? Yeah, somebody got shot. He's possibly dying. He's possibly dying on the Huh?
Where?
Somebody possibly dying on Bavaria Street. He just got shot. He's laying dead. He might be dead. He might be dying. Hurry up. Huh?
Where?
He might be dead. Somebody, I don't know. Somebody just, please, could you hurry up, please, please.
Telling me once.
Please.
I need a
Oh,
call.
Bavaria and Wisconsin. Bavaria and Wisconsin, huh?
Calm down.
That night, police swept the area for curfew violations. Philadelphia had a 10 p.m. curfew for teens under 17 in certain areas. With that in mind, they detained David Sparks and other minors, while the shooter, an older suspect, slipped away. Despite his 911 call signaling he was a witness, not a perpetrator, Sparks became a suspect. Police held him overnight, questioned him without a parent or lawyer, and released him the next day. 2 years later, in 2008, he was arrested and charged with Hall's murder. The case hinged on testimony from 2 teenage cousins aged 12 and 14 at the time of the shooting who claimed they saw Sparks fire the gun. Their accounts were inconsistent, however. One of the girls couldn't initially describe the shooter, and both their stories shifted over time. But a jury convicted Sparks of first-degree murder in June 2009. At 19, he was sentenced to life without parole, mandatory then for such convictions in Pennsylvania. He served 15 years, mostly at SCI Phoenix, missing his daughter's childhood as she was born just after his arrest and losing his teens and 20s to a concrete cell. A 2023 Philadelphia Inquirer article details how Sparks' freedom came through the Philadelphia DA's Conviction Integrity Unit, or CIU, led by Patricia Cummings, and the Pennsylvania Innocence Project. In 2008, his mother, Nicole, heard his 911 call played on a podcast by reporter Samantha Malamed for the first time, sparking hope and connecting her with advocates. The CIU's investigation uncovered suppressed evidence pointing to Ivan Simmons, a 21-year-old with a violent history, as the real shooter. 3 witnesses placed Simmons at the scene fleeing with a gun, and ballistics linked the 9mm bullet that killed Hall to a weapon tied to Simmons' earlier crimes. Simmons himself was killed in a retaliatory shooting in December 2006, only months after Hall's death, perhaps because of Hall's death, but police never disclosed this fact to Sparks' defense. One of the cousin witnesses recanted her testimony in 2023, admitting she wasn't sure who shot Hall. The CIU argued this amounted to a Brady violation, or failure to disclose exculpatory evidence, violating Sparks' constitutional rights. On November 6, 2023, Common Pleas Court Judge Scott DeClaudio vacated Sparks' conviction after a joint petition from the CIU and Sparks' attorney, Andrew Papas. DA Larry Krasner's office dropped all charges, and Sparks, then 34, walked out of the prison that day, greeted by his mother's, sisters, and 4-year-old grandson. The Enquirer quotes him reflecting, "I'm not angry, I just want to live my life," as he reunited with family at his sister's West Oak Lane home for the first time in almost 20 years.
A man who was arrested and convicted in a 2006 murder is now free. Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner announcing the exoneration of David Sparks this afternoon. Sparks was a teenager when he was convicted in the murder of Gary Hall 17 years ago in the Nicetown neighborhood of Philadelphia. But there was another suspect that the defense didn't know about. Detectives say Ivan Simmons, his brother, and another man, Nick Walker, were linked to Hall's murder.
Society wins not only when the guilty are convicted, but when criminal trials are fair. Our system of the administration of justice suffers when any accused is treated unfairly. The government's withholding of evidence that is material to the determination of either guilt or punishment of a criminal defendant violates constitutional rights to due process. It read in the often cited case Brady v. Maryland, in which it was ruled that prosecutors were obligated to turn over exculpatory evidence and discovery that otherwise might aid defense. Prosecutors are unique actors in the criminal legal system. They wield an incredible amount of power and discretion. At the outset of a case, they are solely responsible for deciding whether to bring criminal charges and what charges to bring, which in turn influences the sentence a person will face, as well as whether that person will feel pressure to plead guilty to avoid harsh punishment. In short, prosecutors have powerful tools available to them and different levers they can pull to obtain a conviction. However, they are expected to act with fairness and getting to the truth. But in the last few decades, prosecutors have favored winning cases, even if that means betraying the truth or justice. The culture of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office has been heavily shaped by the city's political history, especially during the 60s and 70s. During that time, tough on crime policies became popular. And Philadelphia followed suit under Police Commissioner Frank Rizzo, who we've spoken about before on this channel. Known for his brutal policing tactics, Rizzo openly endorsed violence against suspects, pushing a quote, break their heads philosophy. He allowed the police to operate with little oversight, fostering a culture of impunity, which eventually led to a civil rights lawsuit by the U.S. Department of Justice. As mayor, Rizzo continued his harsh law and order agenda in the city. By 1979, the New York Times described him as, quote, a one-issue politician focused solely on law enforcement and criticized his role in racially polarizing the city. One of the most significant and heartbreaking consequences of wrongful convictions is the devastating impact they have on innocent people who are sent to prison for crimes they didn't commit. In many cases, these individuals spent years, sometimes even decades behind bars, with some ending up on death row. During that time, they lost not only their freedom, but also critical parts of their lives. Relationships fell apart, careers might have disappeared, and opportunities were taken away from them with no way to get them back. And when they were finally released, they were often met with a world that had moved on without them. They were expected to rebuild their lives from scratch, usually with little to no financial support, limited access to mental health resources, and few systems in place to help them adjust to life outside of prison. The trauma of incarceration, especially when you know you're innocent, leaves deep emotional scars, and many struggle for years just to find stability again. The damage doesn't stop there, however. Another serious consequence of these wrongful convictions is that the real perpetrators of the crimes often went free. While an innocent person was sitting in jail, the actual offender remained out in the world, potentially committing more crimes and putting others at risk. Because so much time often passes between the original crime and the discovery of the wrongful conviction, there's real risk that the chance to catch the true criminal is lost forever. Witness memories fade, evidence deteriorates or is lost, and leads that could have helped solve the case grew cold. As a result, justice isn't served, not for the person who was wrongly accused and not for the victims of the original crime. Finally, there are cases where the system did initially arrest and charge the correct individual, but because of serious prosecutorial misconduct, such as hiding key evidence or engaging in other unethical behavior, the cases fell apart. When that happens, even if the right person is identified, it can become incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to retry them fairly. The misconduct often undermines the integrity of the case and can prevent justice from being carried out properly. Altogether, these issues point to a deeply flawed system where errors and abuses don't just affect one person, they ripple outward, leaving lasting harm for victims, communities, and the very idea of justice itself. Justice, delayed, dismissed, denied. With Philadelphia's court system in disarray, cases crumble as witnesses fear reprisal and thousands of fugitives remain at large. In December 2009, the Inquirer wrote a scathing report on the state of the criminal justice system, the courthouse downtown that processes tens of thousands of legal cases per year. Kareem Johnson stood over Walter Smith and executed him. He fired so close that Smith's blood splashed up onto Johnson's Air Jordan baseball hat, is the first two sentences of the article. In that article, the Inquirer examined the outcomes of 31,000 criminal cases in Philadelphia from 2006 to 2008, uncovering a court system in crisis. The analysis found shockingly low conviction rates in violent crimes like rape, robbery, and assault, far below national averages, helping to explain why Philadelphia has consistently ranked highest in violent crime among the nation's 10 largest cities. Several major issues were identified. Over the previous 10 years, from 1998 to 2008, at least 13 witnesses or their families were killed. Hundreds of people were charged each year with intimidating witnesses, making it extremely hard to secure convictions. With a growing number of cases, the courts are more focused on clearing dockets than ensuring justice. In 2006 and 2007, 92% of defendants who were released in violent crime cases had their charges dropped or dismissed, not acquitted at trial, meaning that most of these cases weren't even making it in front of a judge. Nearly 47,000 fugitives roam free in Philadelphia. The vast majority is for breaking bail and not showing up for court, among the highest in the country. The court has just 51 officers tasked with tracking them down. Bail debt is so poorly tracked that court officials offer 3 widely different estimates ranging from $2 million to $1 billion. The district attorney's office under Lynn Abraham at the time failed to track conviction data, hindering improvement. There were no computerized bail records, just paper files. Cases collapsed due to missing witnesses, unavailable police officers, and inmates not being brought to court. Defense lawyers often exploit these flaws by delaying trials to wear down witnesses. Outgoing DA Lynn Abraham dismissed the findings as unreliable and rejected the idea that justice could be measured by statistics.
And here's what we found out. We found out in Philadelphia that most of our homicides and serious violent crimes, not all, but most, were committed by and between young African American men between the ages of 14 and, let's say, 25, who frequently skipped school, had no serious history of going to school on any regular basis, who came from disruptive or dysfunctional families, separated families whose mothers and or fathers, assuming they were at home at all, were disengaged from their children, who had a multiplicity of issues, some large, some small. They were frequently, but not always, under court supervision. They were really on the cutting edge of deciding at that young age, 14 to 24, whether they were going to live or die by their own conduct, their associates, what they were doing and what they were failing to do. And so we took a trip up to Boston. Like many of our neighborhoods in Philadelphia, you can see downtown Boston, but most of those kids will never get there. I mean, they can take the subway or a bus to get there. That's not what I'm talking about. They can reach the downtown of the city, but they'll never be part of it. They'll always be in their neighborhood looking at this fabulous skyline, but never be an active part of it. They'll probably grow up, live and die at a very young age within 5 blocks of where they were born.
However, her successor, Seth Williams, acknowledged the system's failure and expressed a strong desire for reform. Seth Williams was later indicted on corruption charges. Because of all these shortcomings of the prosecutors in Philadelphia, some serious miscarriages of justice were dealt to the public. The decade of the 2000s laid bare these problems, and the residents of Philly were left to handle the fallout. In 2002, a dice game in North Philadelphia turned violent when Clinton Robinson, then 17, shot Walter Smith, a neighborhood barber, as he tried to leave with his winnings. A stray bullet also killed Margaret Thomas, a 53-year-old grandmother and innocent bystander. Walter Smith survived the shooting and identified Clinton Robinson as a gunman in an audio statement to public defenders. However, 4 months later, Smith was ambushed and killed outside of a bar. Prosecutors believe his murder was an act of witness intimidation. With Smith dead and unable to testify in court, his prior statements was ruled inadmissible. Lacking key testimonies, prosecutors struck a deal with Robinson. He pled guilty to aggravated assault and voluntary manslaughter in exchange for a sentence of 2.5 to 5 years. Thomas's family was devastated with what they saw. Robinson later denied responsibility in a jailhouse interview despite his guilty plea. The Inquirer found that Philadelphia prosecutors have an 82% conviction rate for murder cases in 2006 and 2007, higher than the national average of 71%. However, their success dropped sharply for other violent crimes. Only about 1/3 of robbery and aggravated assault cases led to any conviction in Philly, compared to 69% and 56% nationally. In rape cases, the conviction rate was 58%, slightly below the national average. Philadelphia has consistently ranked among the lowest in felony conviction rates across the country, and the situation has worsened over time, dropping from 52% in 1996 to 40% by 2004. While the national rate stayed stable, the numbers are even more alarming when broken down. Only 19% of defendants charged with both robbery and firearm offenses were convicted of both. For example, about 4,500 gunpoint robberies are reported each year. Only around 200 people are convicted of that crime, just 4%. Even seasoned defense attorneys and law enforcement officials express concern over how many cases are failing in court, calling it a major issue for justice and public safety. Kareem Johnson and Clinton Robinson took full advantage of this. Philadelphia's criminal justice system, plagued by inefficiency and legal loopholes, allowed violent offenders like Clinton Robinson and Kareem Johnson to repeatedly evade serious consequences for their crimes. Robinson, first arrested at 15 for armed robbery, avoided a conviction when the victim failed to appear in court. Multiple later charges, including shootings, were later dropped due to witness no-shows, procedural errors, and exploitation of the court's 3 strikes rules, which dismisses cases if preliminary hearings fail 3 times. Defense attorneys often delayed proceedings deliberately, knowing that prosecution cases weakened over time. These breakdowns enabled Robinson to remain free, ultimately contributing to violent incidents, including a deadly dice game shooting that I mentioned earlier and a playground gunfight that injured an 11-year-old boy. Kareem Johnson followed a similar path, repeatedly arrested on gun charges that were dismissed due to strict state-level search and seizure rulings or failed court appearances by key witnesses. Despite clear patterns of violence, including a robbery caught on camera and numerous illegal gun possession charges, he remained out of prison until he was finally convicted for the murder of 10-year-old Fahim Thomas Child, one of the most notorious cases in Philadelphia history. This tragic shooting outside of an elementary school sparked public outrage and highlighted years of missed opportunities by the system to stop Kareem Johnson. Even when eventually sentenced to death for a separate murder, the failures that allowed him and Robinson to stay on the streets for so long revealed deep cracks in Philadelphia's ability to prosecute violent crime effectively and protect its citizens.
Niggas in the hood stay ready for problems. They walk around with fully automatic weapons at all times.
Hey, that boy Rain Nice, you know what it's having for, man? Y'all, yeah, you know we ride heavy, yeah, man. Heavy artillery, yeah, we do this. Bang, bang, fires all shoot game early. Hey, we put this thing on the keychain, yeah, man. Yeah, this how we rock this thing. It go down at any given time, yeah, man.
Think it's important to carry a pistol out here, man?
Yeah, it is definitely, yeah, man. You gotta ride out here. You play no thing, yeah, man. Yeah, it can go down like that truck riding by. They can go slide out, yeah, man. It go down, and you gotta load them all crazy. Now my gas don't got no safety, yeah, man. My thing is easy, you know what I mean? I get niggas easy pass, they my birthday, you know what I mean? Happy birthday. I'm a young guy, only 19 out this bitch, you know what I mean? So, all me from 26 to Indiana. I come muscle minds all street through, you know what I mean? That's what we do. You know, you gotta rock this thing like your key.
What kind of thing is that, man?
It's an AV-10, you know what I mean? A high tech, you know what I mean?
A man who was arrested and convicted in a 2006 murder is now free. Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner announced the exoneration of David Sparks this afternoon. Sparks was a teen when he was convicted in the murder of Gary Hall 17 years ago in the Nicetown section of Philadelphia. Turns out there was another suspect that the defense did not know about.
We uncovered information that had been withheld from the defense that pointed to an alternative suspect in the murder of Gary Hall. That information was contained in police department files related to a series of retaliatory shootings, as well as the police department file of the alternative suspect who himself was murdered.
Detectives say Ivan Simmons, his brother, and another man, Nick Walker, were linked to Hall's murder. Sparks is expected to walk out of prison later today.
On November 26, 2023, David Sparks walked out of the Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution at Phoenix a free man after spending 17 years behind bars for a murder he did not commit. Sparks, who was only 16 years old when he was arrested in 2006, had always maintained his innocence in the killing of Gary Hall. The unraveling of his conviction began with the tireless efforts of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project and private attorneys who uncovered disturbing misconduct by both police and prosecutors. Ultimately, a court found that the proceedings were so deeply unjust that they amounted to a, quote, miscarriage of justice no civilized society could tolerate. On September 4th, 2006, at approximately 11:35 p.m., Philadelphia police responded to a shooting on the 1700 block of Wingo-Hocking Street. Officers arrived to find a chaotic crowd of about 50 to 100 people. Gary Hall had already been transported to Einstein Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 11:44 p.m. At the crime scene, investigators found 9 .40 caliber casings, a bullet core, a black holster, and a silver bicycle. No fingerprints were found on any of the physical evidence. Lieutenant Aisha Perry identified a surveillance camera at a nearby Chinese restaurant and ordered officers to round up curfew violators in the area. At the time, Philadelphia had a strict curfew ordinance for teenagers under the age of 17. Among those picked up was David Sparks, who was detained and cited for a curfew violation. While sitting in a patrol car, he was suddenly arrested based on a tip from Karen Reddy, the mother of teen witnesses Kalisha and Marquita Reddy. The Reddy cousins told detectives that Sparks shot Hall. Kalisha claimed she saw Sparks' arm extended, though she did not see a gun. Marquita corroborated the account, but also admitted Hall had argued with Marquise Lawrence, the brother of another man later identified as the true killer, Ivan Simmons. David Sparks' trial began on April 28, 2008, in a non-jury trial presided over by Judge Sheila Wood Skipper. Prosecutor James Berardinelli and defense attorney Edward Meehan faced off in a courtroom built around the young Reddy girls' testimony. On May 1, 2008, David Sparks was convicted of first-degree murder, firearms violation, and possession of an instrument crime. On May 23, 2008, he was sentenced to life without parole, along with the additional years for the lesser charges.
Huh? Yeah, somebody got shot. He's possibly dying. He possibly died on Bavaria. Huh?
Where?
Somebody possibly dying on Bavaria Street. He just got shot. He's laying dead. He might be dead. He might be dying. Hurry up. Huh?
Where?
He might be dead. Somebody, I don't know. Somebody just, please, hurry up, please.
You're telling me one
Please.
I need a call.
Bavaria and Wisconsin. Bavaria and Wisconsin. Huh?
Calm down.
Over the years, new evidence gradually emerged that pointed to Ivan Simmons as the actual shooter. Simmons was killed in retaliation on November 30th, 2006, just after Hall's death. The key breakthrough came in 2022 when District Attorney Larry Krasner's office released the long-suppressed homicide, or H-file, on Ivan Simmons. The file included witness interviews stating Simmons had killed Gary Hall, a note confirming Socrates Clark, Hall's cousin, believed that Simmons was the shooter. Clark was himself shot around this time. A quote, to-do list from the police listing Sparks' mother as someone to question because she was seen arguing with the Simmons family about her son's arrest. Police found connection between multiple retaliatory shootings involving friends and family of both Hall and Simmons, but nothing to do with David Sparks. Also in the H-files was evidence that prosecutors and police had withheld all of this information from the defense team in an egregious violation of the Brady disclosure laws. At the time of Sparks' original trial, prosecutor Berardinelli claimed he had never seen the Simmons H-file before. Both Kalisha and Marquita Reddy, now adults, recanted their testimony, stating they were pressured by family members loyal to Ivan Simmons to implicate Sparks. Other key individuals, including Barry McShure, who claimed to identify Sparks as the shooter, later admitted he didn't witness the shooting at all. Several police officers involved in the case, including Officer Jason Reed, Lieutenant Aisha Perry, and Detective James Pitt, have since been fired or disgraced for various misconduct-related reasons. None are currently on the Philadelphia Police Force. With all this new evidence presented in a 257-page report, which I had the pleasure of reading all the way through, with new evidence and witness recantments, the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas vacated Sparks' conviction on November 6, 2023, and the District Attorney's Office dropped all charges. Sparks, now 34 years old, was finally free. After 17 years of wrongful incarceration, Sparks was reunited with his family, including his daughter, who was born shortly after his arrest and had never seen him outside of prison. David Sparks' case highlights deep systemic failures within Philadelphia's justice system, failures that span corrupt officers, prosecutorial misconduct, and suppressed evidence. As one of many convictions being re-examined under Larry Krasner's administration, it shows just how dangerous unchecked police and prosecutorial power can be. Sparks is now focused on rebuilding his life, looking for work, and cherishing the freedom that was stolen from him for nearly 2 decades. In my opinion, financial compensation should follow, but no amount can return the lost time, missed moments, and stolen years that the city of Philadelphia took from David Sparks. I'm gonna leave it there for now. I've got so much more content in the work, and just understand when I don't post for weeks like this, just know I'm loading up some heavy shit. Thanks for watching American Confidential, and until next time, be safe.